gone through a lot. We're talking about the transition out of sport now. What have been the biggest challenges in your transition out of sport? I think for me, it was just kind of what we talked about in the last session of just fitness, but also understanding that life is a lot different now. I think I took college for granted. I think I took college athletics for granted in terms of like school. Like school, you're taking 15 credit hours maybe, and you have a few classes a day, and you have practice, and that feels like the biggest part of your day. But now when you work like a 40-hour week and 9 to 5, and you're struggling to put in your fitness time, and you're having to prioritize family and friends, and you're losing contact with people because it's like, if it's not a priority, it's not going to get done. Yeah. That's been my biggest challenge. What about you guys?
For me, it's been applying like my work ethic from basketball and applying it to like life and my career. Like it's very hard to transition and know like your sole focus was this thing. I know if I work out and I do this and I show up and do what I'm supposed to do, that like I'm going to be successful and I'm going to improve. But it's hard to translate that when you've done that for so long in one thing, to translate that to like a new career. At least it was for me. So I think that was the biggest thing leaving school.
Yeah.
For me, it was just like the role change. So like, of course, I identified a lot in basketball. Like we mentioned before, it's like your job and it takes up so much of your life. And now, like my husband, like we just got married and my husband works all day and I stay at home with the dogs. Like I don't have a full-time job. I train like kids on the side, but like that is just becoming like a very heavy thing that I'm like so aware of now. Like I'm not, prepping to play this team. I'm not like preparing for practice. Like my day-to-day is not like that anymore. It's just like so, I don't know. It's like hard to find your purpose. It's hard to find like a new identity as a wife, as like a homeowner and like a caretaker. Like that's just something that I've never had before. So that's been like difficult. This sounds like so dramatic, but I heard somewhere that athletes actually should be put through some sort of program that like military people, like whenever they come back, they should be put through something to kind of like remind yourself that like, there is more to life than, basketball, and just like adjusting to that, because it's just like, it was such a blunt cut that I'm just like, okay, like what do I do now? Right, yeah. And it's gotten to the point that like my husband and I, because my husband is a ex college and professional athlete as well, so we actually sought out to like go to therapy because we just can't, it's very difficult to navigate all those things by yourself. And like we try to talk like about our feelings whenever it comes to like, okay, like it's hard for me to find my purpose because of basketball. Like I identified so much in that. Like it's just kind of hard to, you need like a professional to help you navigate through all of that, and just kind of like, move on with your life and start like putting forth all of your efforts and pouring into, different things and just finding like new passions, Right. So that's been the most difficult, is just like the role change and like finding your identity and, that type of thing.
Yeah, definitely. Just like having hobbies. I remember I was like...
Yeah, what hobbies?
Yeah, seriously. I was like, okay, like you're not a basketball player anymore. And I was someone who was really ready to be done with my sport. Like college it took the joy of the sport away from me, and I'm just not getting it back. But I remember thinking, I was like, okay, so, you're not Sydney the basketball player anymore. Like we're on to new things. She's gone. But I'm like, who is she then? Like, I was like, so what hobbies do you have? And when someone asked me, I'm like, well... And it was like a long silence. I'm like, I don't know. Like, and now I have this and I have other things, but it's taken a really long time. Like, I finished up in 2017 and it's 2021 now. So it's been a little bit of time, and I've had some time to dig into like who I am outside of my sport. And I find that in the podcast, we talk a lot about identity, and identity being wrapped up in sport. And just sometimes you don't even realize it. Like, you don't have to be the best player to have your identity wrapped up in your sport. You don't have to be all world, all American, Olympian. It doesn't have to be that way. It could just be like, that's all you have to you. Like, I know for me, it was the big thing of in college when someone would ask me like, oh, hi, how are you? I'm like, oh, I'm Sydney. I'm on the basketball team. Like, that was the intro. It wasn't like, I'm Sydney, period, and like, nice to meet you. It's like, no, but I'm on the basketball team. Don't you see my gear? Yeah. And it was just like, that was all of me. And so just learning how to like figure out hobbies. Like, what do you like to do outside of now that you're done, you know?
I still like to coach basketball. So.
Still doing it?
No, I mean, I relate to all that you guys have said. The identity piece is big. But I wanted basketball to be a part of me, and I still like coach, and that is kind of like my foot in to feel like I'm still, a part of it or giving back in some aspect. But it definitely makes me miss playing. Like, there is a difference, being the one playing versus being coach. Like, you still feel competitive in certain aspects, but you just don't have a lot of control about what happens on the court, and that's difficult. But basketball is still a part of my identity because I coach. Like, people at the high school I work at know who I am sometimes because I coach basketball, and so, but that didn't happen right away, and I think I don't know, and I don't think I'm going to coach forever. I mean, I guess you can coach for a pretty long time, but it's just going to be different, kind of coming out of it. And I mean, I don't have a ton of hobbies besides
coaching.
No, I mean, I like to be outside. I like to, if I had a perfect day, it would probably involve some sort of outside exercise, like hiking or something. I really enjoy doing stuff like that, but I mean, on the day-to-day, basketball is my, like, fun part. It's a release from my job. My job is very heavy from 8 to 2:45. So, yeah.
It's funny you say that.
Yeah.
I had one of my players asked me that the other day, like, what are your hobbies? And I literally was, like, stopped in my tracks, like, watch TV? Like the fact that I could not come up with anything else. But listening to you say that made me think, like, my life is still very much so wrapped up in basketball.
Same.
And I don't always think of it that way. Like, my literal day job is with a basketball association. I coach the middle school on the side, and I now that I have time, go practice against the varsity. Like, there's very much so every aspect. And, I'm watching college games on TV at night, and just like, I guess it just hadn't occurred to me. Like, I'm still very much so enveloped in this game. But the idea, like, well, at some point that will stop, right? So maybe I'm still just, like, holding on to elements of basketball and didn't even know it.
Oh, I think I certainly am.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Sorry, did I cut you?
No, you're good.
Okay, cool. No, I think that's interesting because, you are really into basketball. And I think it's good to know that, like, for both of you, if you don't want it to stop, it doesn't have to continue as you as a player. Like, you could still be very connected to the sport. I mean, thinking about what I do full time, I am very into sports in general. Like, I'm in sports journalism. So I'm covering basketball. I write a lot of, like, different stories, and a lot of them have been basketball related. So, you're always kind of around the game if you want to be. I think that's always exciting. And for those who really do want to be around it, for me, I did need some time away from the sport. I've taken the last 4 years to really do nothing around it. But I know my transition out was really tough because I didn't even want to touch a basketball for, I think, like 3 of these 4 years. Wow. I think I've shot more in this past year, just getting up shots by myself than I have in the past 3 years, like, all combined. Just because it's like, it kind of took a piece of me, unfortunately. My career didn't go anything like I thought it would. And while that's okay, and I'm glad that, like, I'm doing what I'm doing now and that it's caused me to kind of create this platform, it's a hard transition. And I feel like, kind of like you're saying, like, where is the training to be able to become, like, a normal civilian? As crazy as that sounds, I'm like, someone who is not wrapped up in her sport, I don't know who that is. Like, that wasn't me. And I thought it was just so interesting that was so hard for me, considering I was so ready to be done. Like, I remember my last year, every single conditioning workout, I'm like, Sydney, you have to give everything you can because this is the last year you're going to do it. Like, you don't want to give less because it's like you literally cannot do this again. Your eligibility's up after this. And so it's just been hard. Like, I think for me, my process of finding my hobbies has been interesting. It was just a lot of, like, I was like, well, what do other people like to do? Like, they're like, oh, they like to go hiking? I like hiking now.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
I'll go hiking or and slowly like I do actually genuinely enjoy hiking and I feel like a lot of people do. But like just finding out like, oh, I like anything that's relatively creative and what that means to me. And sometimes like it's hard to narrow down your hobbies and it doesn't have to be some like put one word on it type of thing, but like what is your outlet? Like I'm sure there is something, and if it is watching TV, then like let it be that, you know. I think that's huge. Yeah.
I'm kind of in the same boat as you in that, like, I was fortunate enough to be able to get like a good like closure to my career. Like I played in Ireland, and that's like I needed that closure because I was kind of traumatized from college, and I'm in the same boat in that I don't really doubt the fact that I would enjoy a pickup game. Like if I were to, I haven't played in a pickup game, but if I did, I know that I would be like, this is the best day of my life. Like I love this, but I'm just too scared to do it. Like I still feel like burnt out. I still feel like kind of traumatized. I refuse to watch any basketball on TV. I don't watch basketball still. Like I can't tell you the last time I watched a women's game on TV. Men's NBA, I just can't watch it.
Because
it's like,
you miss it, or what is it from?
I don't know. It's like, I don't know. It's hard to describe. I just feel so like traumatized from it.
Yeah.
It's
like it's triggering.
Yes,
triggering.
Okay.
Yes, okay.
Triggering is a good word.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. But if I were to play in a pickup game, it would be like right where I left off type of thing.
Yeah.
But I just, to a certain extent, like part of me just doesn't feel ready for it. It's still like very fresh. I don't know. It's just like that relationship is so hard to navigate. Like it's so complex and like so many highs and lows. And now I just like don't really know how to feel about it. And I think if I were to play in a pickup game right now, it would just make me so mad if I was bad. Like
Oh yeah.
if
Gonna be out of shape.
Yeah.
Wheezing.
I mean, I do get that. Like, I mean,
Like-
I love to play, but I'll still be pissed if I am not playing well. And then but then I think to myself, literally doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Like,
Right,
And then I think to
right.
myself, oh, but that was some good exercise.
I shoot with my sister who is still playing
Uh-huh.
professional basketball, and like if we go to the gym, I'm still expecting myself to perform well in the shooting drills, and I'm like, it's not like riding a bike
Keeping your
track, Kiana. Like you
stats,
can't,
know?
yeah,
Like, okay, was I 6 for
Yeah.
10?
like trying to perform like her. I'm like, what are you?
Yeah.
No.
Like I would
That's
be
not
keeping
even
track of my
reasonable.
turnovers in a pickup game.
keeping track of your turnovers.
Like
What?
because
that's just what it is, you know?
well, because in college we had this thing. So like I would go to my coach, similar, but my coach, like I would go to him and be like, "Hey, coach, like what can I do to get some more playing time?" And he would never be able to give me an answer. But the one thing he would always say is like reference the numbers. He's like, what is your 3-point percentage? What's your assist to turnover ratio? And so I got so obsessed. You know, like on your phone, whenever it's like, you don't even bookmark it. It's just the most recently visited site.
Yeah.
It was always our stat page. Like I was getting obsessive. I would check it after every single game. In the game, whenever I missed a 3, I'd be like, that's lowering my percentage right now. And it was like insane. And if I were to play in a pickup game and I like had a turnover, I would probably I'd hear a whistle and like I know I'm about to get like they called me C-dub in college, and I can just hear it like C-dub. Like it's traumatizing.
Yeah.
I need help.
But I mean, you're also like really fresh out of it for the most part.
Yes.
And so I mean, to be honest, when I was where you are in your transition out, I was kind of dealing with the same things. Like,
Yeah.
I think I would enjoy a pickup game now. Like it's been some time. But also the way I view basketball is different. Like, man, watching a high school game is hard for me. I'm like, this isn't good basketball. Where's the good basketball? Or like watching a college game, I'm like, they're running a horn screen. Like, why? Or you literally cut over your face. Like, I'm like looking at the play. Like, it's
Same.
not just
Same.
like
Yeah,
actually watching the game.
Right.
Like my days of just enjoying basketball for what it is. Like the only time that works is like NBA, because sometimes I'm like, what play is this? I don't know what they're running.
It's no defense.
I'm like,
Can't
what?
pick up much
Like,
of that.
I'm like, he's not in help side. Oh, 3 seconds. Like defensive 3 seconds. Like what's going on? But yeah, like my days of watching the game for just like pure enjoyment are over. And so I laugh because it's like I remember like in AAU, it's funny, we all come from the same program. I'm like, just how like good I thought we were in terms of like execution and playing and like helps that deep. And then I got to college, I'm like, man, I got beat back door every single time, or like she cut my face every single time. Like, and then to get to like college, having done that, and now I'm like, no, like so when someone gets like cut across or the face or whatever, like something fundamentally goes wrong, I'm like, that's a film session. I feel bad for the girl. I'm like, oh well, that's.
Poor girl.
Yeah, I'm like, she should have. Anyway. But,
I think to comment on what Cassidy said, like, the biggest thing, and of course, I work for a coaching association, so these things are always top of mind for me. But all of those things that you are mentioning from your experience are problematic of a lot of programs. Mm-hmm. You're not the only kid who came from there, I'm sure, with that experience. And like the truth of the matter is everybody wants to say like kids are soft and this and that and the third. But the reality is like some of these coaches, there has to be accountability and there have to be checks and balances of people around who are stopping these type of things. You checking a stat sheet all the time, like I've never heard that before. And like that's wild to me. Yeah. And Sydney, earlier you said like for transition out of sport and like where are the programs? So I'm on a commission and we're looking at the athlete experience. And one of the things that was like important to me was about post eligibility. Because I had teammates who I felt like fell through the cracks after they hadn't graduated, but they were done, like their eligibility was done. Mm-hmm. But now they didn't have the sport, like they had no motivation to complete or get things done. And so it's going to be important for the NCAA or any sort of governing institution to have post eligibility for even us as seniors who are on track to leave to know, because you're right, like there's a form of like PTSD for a lot of people who are like, whoa, like what do I do now? Like I've always been told where to go, I've always been told how much to do something, when to eat, all these different things, and then you release them to the world and they're like, like what happens here? And again, from the mental health aspect, that, I mean, we all probably had some element of like our mental health was in question because everything we knew is no longer there. It's not reliable. When things were tough when you play basketball, well, you just get in the gym. You'd be like, this is my release. Well, now you don't have that. Like, and so there has to be accountability from these institutions as well to get us to a place where we're ready to leave them, because it's like we have all this value while we're there, and then the minute that last game is over, it's like, well, and they move on and they recruit and like and like they owe you to be able to be a viable person out in the workplace. I mean, it takes us a while to transition. I know we're talking about transitioning, but like for me, it probably took me 2 years, 3 years. I'm about 6 years. Are we 6 years?
We're 6.
We're about to be 6 years out, and like it took me a good bit to like become a real human out in the workplace. And I'm sure like that's probably true for most college like people who have graduated, but like I feel like as athletes there was a unique set of circumstances because your identity is now in question.
I would agree. I tell people I think it takes 2 years. I think it takes 2 full years out of sport in general, like whether you're a professional, I don't know about high school, but college and professional, I think it takes about 2 years to feel like, hey, I can do this. Like, my life is different. I'm okay with it finally. But you're talking about these institutions putting things in place. They can stand to get better. I think we can all say that. But were there any things that your colleges had in place or things that you tapped into that helped the transition? I know for me, UVA, even though that's not the college that I finished at to go into the rest of my life, but they had something in place called I Am More. It was a club that was run by student athletes that was helping student athletes transition.
That's cool.
Super progressive. My not guidance counselor, what do they call it? Academic coordinator. Academic coordinator. He was the head of all academic coordinators, and he had put that in place. He was amazing. I was so fortunate to have him because he knew me as someone who wanted to be more than just an athlete. So while I was good on the court, I'd come in and I'd be like, I'm really trying to understand investing, and he'd be like, oh, well, let's talk about it. I'm like, that's literally not your job. You don't have to do that. But he kind of I think from my conversations and then just him wanting to put us in a good position, put together this program, and I ended up becoming the head of it at one point where it helps kids write a resume, it helps kids like get business cards, understand what like a formal dinner would look like, and like what to use, like what don't use that one, use this one, not that fork, this one.
Right.
So all that good stuff, and we had a good like base of like donors and things like that, and so just understanding like, oh, you can tap into this. Granted, I think it's like it is what you make it. Like kids signed up for it, but like, did you write the resume? Right. Have you got like, did you do the practice interviews? Like, you have to actually put this into place. But I will say at Virginia, I think like if nothing else, they gave me a good foundation of what to do. Like I think I wasn't someone who was looking around like, I don't know. Like, is it hard to get a job after college? Absolutely. I mean, we're in a pandemic. I cannot imagine the people who graduated in 2020 or even that are about to graduate in 2021. Like, it's tough. But I had a good foundation. What about you guys leaving college? What was it like for you?
I don't think we had much of anything put in place. Definitely not like that. I just think the hardest part is you go from like this group of females that are kind of your support system for a lot of different things, and then you graduate and you all go back to your 7 different states that you came from to college. I mean, that's hard. Like, I wish that, I wish some of me and my college teammates could like transition out together. Like we don't really do it together, and that's hard because you do feel like it's an individual thing. We're all trying to get jobs, and yes, on your resume they see that you were a collegiate athlete, but I don't know. You definitely feel like a part of you has been taken away when you're trying to move forward. But yeah, it's definitely. I mean, I'm still working.
Yeah. Do you think like being a student athlete helps you as you're looking for work? Because I think that while it's helpful, I'm not convinced that it's like. Everyone's like, yeah, they love to hire student athletes. And I'm like, yeah, but if that's the only thing you bring to the table, they're like, oh, how are you going to help me grow this business? Like,
sure.
Who, this is great. Like, you can work on a team, but
I think it can never hurt you.
Right.
I mean, I do think you have to be a qualified candidate, but I mean, to be honest, every job that I have had currently is because I'm a former basketball player.
I would.
I mean, no
joke.
Seriously, I moved to Connecticut. I moved from North Carolina to Connecticut when JD worked at UConn, and I didn't know a soul in Connecticut. And people in Connecticut definitely didn't know, the App State. I mean, they might have, but they didn't know anything about Watauga High School, where I did my internship in Boone. Like, they were like, "What is that?" And so there was no personal connection. But they saw that I was a Division I basketball player, and guess who needed an assistant basketball coach? And then found me a job in the school because I wanted to work at the high school. I mean, I guarantee I wouldn't have gotten that job unless I had the basketball aspect. And then after we left Connecticut, we came back down to Georgia, and I mean, I started looking at coaching availabilities almost before counseling availabilities. Like, I mean, it's just so interesting. And everyone being a counselor and a coach is a unique combo at the high school level. Most coaches are teachers or PE teachers in that. So I mean, I was lucky enough, like, they did want to coach, and they did have a counseling job, which I was very, I sought after that. But I firmly believe that everything I've gotten has been because of my basketball connection. Was I a qualified candidate as well? Sure. I think it's a point of interest that a lot of people can hold on to because they relate to it in some aspect. I think there's an amount of respect too that comes with being a student athlete.
I think that it definitely like says a lot about like your intangible like characteristics and skills and stuff like that. But I will say, for me personally, I feel like it'd be very difficult for me to get a job because I don't have experience because of sports. Like, my resume, like, they literally, in my class where we built our resume, they had, okay, if you're an athlete, then this is the resume you have to build. And, like, on my resume, I have relevant coursework from, like, college to fill up the page because I only had like 2 internships, and those internships were literally just the most convenient ones because I had summer school and I had basketball, and I was like, of course trying to, work on my game and maintain shape and stuff like that. So I didn't have the time to like pour in professional, like to the things that would help me professionally. So, and I think that was also because I wanted to work on basketball and I didn't want to have to like seek out an internship or something like that. But I feel like it's hard just because a lot of people just don't have the time to do these super cool internships because they're still dedicated to their sports.
Yeah, it's hearing you say that, I know everything I've said has been like institutional, but that's an institutional problem again. Like, and I'm not saying it's your school, but it's just across the board, Division I sports in general. Like D2 allow and D3 allow for more flexibility because you're not allowed to be there for the summer unless you just like to do yourself. So there provides a bit of balance there, but like there has to be more of an emphasis on coaches pushing y'all toward like degrees that you actually care to be in, right?
Not
Like,
just convenient for the practice schedule.
Right.
Yeah, that's real.
So like that's totally an overall like institutional thing that has to be looked at for providing time and your ability to find an internship you actually like. You said something earlier. I wonder, that club you were part of or that you were leading, like I know you said like people had to essentially elect to like make it what it was. Like you had to make of it what you wanted. But I think like things like that need to be mandatory for all student athletes.
Yeah, I think at the time it was like choose 2 people from a team. Like maybe a coach would choose 2. It was a startup kind of thing. So I'm not sure what they currently do now or if they even have it. But I think.
But I mean, for all schools,
I agree.
You should have to do that because we're all facing all the exact same thing.
Yeah, maybe like when you're a junior and a senior, that's when you start.
Right. Financial literacy. Like, first of all, you need it the freshman year because a lot of them are burning checks. My sister, hope she's watching this. Money on food and shoes, like for 4 years. And that's her prerogative, right? Like,
and I did that for a little while too.
But even my teammates, I mean, broke at the end of the semester, but they surely enjoyed their shoes and their Applebee's. And
Oh God.
But I think that there's validity in like that all of us, because as student athletes, and I keep trying to get this across to the people I serve on this commission with, if it's not mandatory, you can count it out. Count it as not, like career services. Everyone says it's there. Great, it's there. They're not going. Life skills. Unless it's mandatory, you are not there.
So I don't too many other commitments that are mandatory.
Right. I don't care if the school has it. I don't care, like if it's not in close proximity, even mental health resources, if it is not in close proximity to those athletes, it is not going to be utilized. You just don't have the time. So I just think it's just it's an overall, like the institutions have to take, I mean, you're dealing with 18 to 22-year-olds. Like, there's nothing about their lives that if you don't mandate or make happen, don't expect it to happen.
Yeah. You talked about internships. I think, like you said that you wanted to get better at basketball, so you weren't necessarily like seeking them out. During my time at UVA, I did have a good amount of internships. Like I got a chance to intern for ESPN in DC, intern for Nike. After that, intern for CNN. So like I had really awesome internships.
I know, right?
And that's not like, oh yeah, look at me.
No,
that's
awesome.
But I think like the biggest thing was, while I had that, I wouldn't say all of my teammates had that. And I think we all have like teams that ran the spectrum where it was girls who were so into their books and other girls who were like, listen, I'm just trying to go pro and I'm really just doing basketball for the rest of my life and that's all I'm interested in. And that's fine. But I will say like the reason why I got this is because I went and sought them out. And so it's like the opportunities are there, but also building a case for yourself until we have these mandatory things in place where you can have it and your coaches are obligated to let you do them. I remember when I got my internship with ESPN's Around the Horn, I had just come off a summer where I had like I don't know. I stayed the whole summer. Like I literally stayed and trained the whole summer. Like the little bit of time I had to go home, I was like, I'll just stay and train and take classes and please play me. And so I did that, and I was like, this summer I'm not doing that. I need to focus on other things, because I was like, clearly, I mean, basketball is never the girl who's like, I'm gonna go pro. Never. Yeah. I just really wanted to get my education paid for.
Yeah.
So I remember I got the internship, and I was so excited, and then I was like, oh, I gotta tell coach, like, how's this gonna go? And so the process of trying to convince my coach, which it wasn't really a huge convincing thing, but in my mind, I was like, I was building it up. I like didn't come with a presentation by any means, but like pretty close. Like I was like, here are the notes that I have. This is how far I am, and this is what to do. And this is the like location that I'll be working on every day. Trust me, I'm doing my workouts. And like Coach Barnett will give me the sheets, and like I had it. And by the time I got to that, she was like, Sid, I'm happy for you. Like go and do that. I think you're gonna do great. You're not what I'm worried about. And I was like, this is such a productive meeting. Thank you so much. But like seriously, I was so worked up about it, and I think the reason why she even like didn't even bat an eye is because I was a good student. Like I had proven myself to be good, and someone who I had already stayed the summer before. Like the body of work I'd given her was not something that she would be like, Sid's not taking this seriously. Like if she goes, she's gonna fall apart. That wasn't. And I actually came back. Like I was so anxious, which we're not gonna touch on that. So anxious about coming back out of shape that I came back so in shape that like I just ran to myself to death in DC. But like just I needed to, that internship was super important to me. Like not only was it a big name and a great opportunity, but I would come from a household where it's like you need to grab every opportunity, like don't leave anything on the table. So while you feel as though you don't have time, like it's just about your priorities. I think sometimes like for me, basketball wasn't going well, and I was like, I already gave my summer to that. Like, I have to do something else. So let me do what I need to do to maintain and be good for the team. But like at the end of the day, I'm gonna be Sydney, like the working individual for the rest of my life. I won't be Sydney, the basketball player, for the rest of my life. And so that was my perspective going into it. Yeah. But I do think like internships are a great way to do it, even though you might feel like you don't have time. Fellowships are a good way to go. Are there other things that in your mind that students could be doing to kind of help them along?
Well, I mentioned the financial literacy, like get that together because
it's life.
Right. Like once you become like a real functioning adult after, like that's important to know. No, nothing.
Yeah. And even if you don't, that's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you have anything, Katie?
No, I mean, I just remember how difficult it was to get internships. And I mean, I had a psychology undergrad, but in my master's program, I had to get a certain amount of hours, and I was a GA for women's basketball, and I had to miss stuff as a GA and felt bad missing an away trip because they're going somewhere because I had to get my clinical hours for my graduate program, but I still felt bad and felt like I was not, I wasn't helping them or doing my role on an away trip. And I know that's why I picked some different things to major in as an undergrad. Yeah. Because I put basketball first a lot. But, I mean, I know some girls on my team were advised to not be education majors because you have to get a certain amount of student teaching hours. Yeah. And that's hard.
It doesn't work for a practice that's set every day.
Yep. So. Same like one of my teammates wanted to be a bio undergrad, and she had a lab, like there was only one bio lab time and it was set and it just wasn't working out. I mean, it was difficult. So
we had girls on our team that were like nursing majors because Stanford's like a really big nursing school and like UAB is right there. Yeah. And I don't know how they did it, but like whenever they came to practice, they were so like emotionally unstable because like they would be like on their feet doing clinical hours. Like they had their different stages where they had to do like a full like 12-hour shift, or they would have to do like a night shift, and they would have practice, and like you're exhausted and then you're like thrown into the arena to try to conquer all of those challenges. And to this day, sport admin right here. So I was like, that was my major. So it was so, I respect people that are able to juggle all of those things.
I mean, even on my visit, they took me, I told them I wanted to do athletic training. Ill-advised. It's not a thing that I actually needed to do. I don't like blood or anything. But like on my trip, they took me to the that department, and they were like, yeah, athletes like typically don't do this. Like they were letting me know from the jump, like this is just not normal, and you probably won't be able to keep your workload up. And but Georgia College is a nursing school, or is a popular nursing school. And before, like my freshman year, sophomore year, there were no nursing majors on the basketball team. We ended up with two or three by the time I left. And it was just because my coach was willing to allow them to have some flexibility, and they just like worked with their teachers. But like that was already, I mean, it was a stretch. I'm not sure how they did it, how they got their clinical hours. Right. But yeah, there's definitely a pushing toward certain majors like
sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah. There's actually something, I'm not sure by the time we put this out if it's would have passed or not, but there's a bill going through the Senate currently it's called the College Athletics Bill of Rights. It was put forth by Cory Booker, the senator in New Jersey, as well as I think another senator, or maybe a few. And it's basically would allow, among so many other things, student athletes to be able to maintain their eligibility up until they finish their undergraduate degree, allowing coaches to not tell them which things to take, which courses to take. Among those other things, they could sign endorsement deals, which is crazy. Huge. And that's a whole nother discussion. But also would get health care for an extended period of time after, which is huge for athletes that get injured. But like it seems as though we're trending hopefully in that direction where student athletes can choose majors that make sense for what they want to be doing after sport, because sport is only so long. So I think that's so important. To end this off, I want to talk about just like maybe one key piece of advice for someone who is transitioning out of sport. I can start. And I think the biggest thing that I would say is to just know that you are more than an athlete, but also that you are still that girl who did all of those things. Mm-hmm. So like, I think it's so easy to have like an identity crisis because your identity has been so wrapped up in your sport. But, and I'm stealing this from like one of my friends, I call her my sister. We played at Virginia together, but she said this in her podcast. She's like, you're still that girl. You can do hard things. You are so capable. And so not like stumbling over this piece of adversity where you're like trying to figure out the next step in your life. You're still that girl. You could still do it. And so that's my piece of advice. Cool.
I got no look. No, I guess mine is more so a general like a life philosophy, which again may get me in trouble in the way that I live my life, but like that things will work out the way that they're supposed to. And I know that sounds like such a cliche, and it's annoying when people are actually going through things. Yeah. And when someone tells you that, you're like, okay, got it, thanks. Well, today sucks, but like it will all come together. Does it look like a perfect picture at the end? No, who knows? But I just think for so long I was striving for this thing over here, or I was supposed to have this career by this time, and I wanted to move out of my mother's house by this day, like, because that becomes a real thing after school sometimes, and that was a whole ordeal. But just like that, like it may be bad today, but like just think big picture. Yeah. And I just had to learn like it's gonna shake out one way or the other, right? Like you deal with the problem, but the sun will rise tomorrow.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think that like for me, it's just like not comparing your journey to like anybody else's. Like everybody is going through something different. Everybody has a different background, has different plans for their future, and like whenever you finish, you're kind of like, it's tempting to be like, oh, what's she doing? What does she look like now? What how many kids does she have? Is she married? Is she, fit? Like, it's easy to compare. But like, they say comparison is like the thief of joy.
Absolutely.
So it's just like, being focused on what, like God has planned for you and for your life, and just knowing that that's different person to person. And that's hard because we live in a like place today where just comparing is just so easy, and it's tempting, and there's social media, and there are just so many places to look to compare yourself. So I would just say like embrace like your own journey, because like kind of like you said, it's meant for you. Like whatever's meant to happen for you is meant to happen.
Definitely.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I agree with all of the above. I mean, transitioning from that as being just kind of trying to figure out who you are, and that's the hardest point. And I think all along we were trying to figure out who we are, but we just have this big thing that we were so invested in the whole time. And so maybe like just trying to figure out how to still make that a part of your life if you want it to be. And it's funny because all of us still have like sport in our lives a little bit, and because that is a part of who we are. Like, I am not a basketball player anymore, but basketball has just been a huge part of my life. And so I think just trying to find a balance, if you want it to still be a part of your life, then to figure out what that looks like for you, and just be patient with yourself.
In a women's league.
Yeah,
absolutely.
In our women's
play
league.
pickup if you want, and don't track your stats.
Have y'all watched?
Control.
Have you ever watched film of yourself back from college? I'm sure
Oh.
you probably
Ooh,
don't.
that's crazy.
I have. I mean,
I
my
would-
players look up film of me. It's really annoying.
Yeah, I don't. I
I
can't.
I did it for like
I
so
can't.
long, but I have a hard drive like
yeah.
of the videos.
Oh, I'll watch the
see.
good games. I'll watch the good games and be like, okay, yeah, I did that.
She was good.
Yeah.
That girl.
No.
31.
Yeah. No, I'll watch the good games.
Yeah.
Shoot.
Yeah.
I'll do that. But
But I get like stuck in it. You still feel like you're like a YouTube rabbit hole, like, but it's just on my own hard drive. Like, I'm editing something else for something else, and I'm like, oh, that game film folder right there. Let me just. It's like 2 hours later, and I'm like, oh no, how did we get here? I'm like texting teammates. I'm like, girl, look at that pass you threw. It's so bad.
that's so
crazy.
funny.
So bad. But it took a long time to get there. I didn't miss basketball for a very long time, and then one day it just like snaps inside you. You're like, oh, that thing I did for a very long time.
Right.
I'll let you know when mine snaps.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't want to expect it anytime soon.
I look forward to what happens.
Hey guys, I hope you enjoyed that series. It's the end of it, but more content is coming soon. So be sure to like and subscribe, as well as hit the bell notification so you don't miss out on any content. Also, we're a podcast, so you can check us out wherever you listen to podcasts. We're gonna be there. Be sure to follow us on Instagram and on Facebook. And if you really, really love our content, you can also become a patron, which means you give to us every month and we give you exclusive content. With that said, I hope you enjoyed the series, and I cannot wait to see you in our next one.